If I'm like leading a workshop, let's say there's 100 women, and I'll go, how many of you feel like you're behind? 90% of them raise their hand. Fascinating. Behind in what? I don't know. The ones that don't usually are older women that have gotten to the point of less fucks given. There's a sense of like, I'm behind, and according to who? Whose timeline are we living by? And there is no timeline. Oh, I'm too late. For what? For who?
Okay.
All
Jennifer Pastiloff, what a treat.
Oh, it's my full name.
Yeah.
No.
Well, you deserve a full and proper introduction.
Jennifer Lynn Pastiloff.
Thanks for coming all the way down from Ojai.
It was, you know what? I stepped into this place and I feel like I'm on retreat somewhere, so thank you.
Good. Well, proof of life. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed listening to the book. So I listened to it and I've read bits of it. And
wait, you listened to it?
Yeah.
They sent you audio?
No, I just have a trick.
Oh, okay.
I know how to do this. And it's funny because I can listen to it read by Snoop Dogg, or I can... So you'll enjoy listening to yourself as Snoop Dogg.
Miley Cyrus.
Yeah.
That raspy voice, but I would want her to sing it.
Yeah.
And like, anyway.
Well, I sang some of it along with it because it is very singable, very poetic. And so...
You know you can't say that without us ending before you actually pick it up and sing a bit of it. Anyway.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, maybe I'll get you to read some of the poetry as well. Because
oh my God,
I love the structure of it too, because the allow section.
What structure?
Oh yeah, what structure? The structure of no structure. But all of the poetry at the end of the chapters, and it was just very artfully put together. So well done.
Thank you.
But really the juice of it is unwinding your bullshit stories, right? Taming your inner asshole. And I'm of course using your language.
Yeah.
You know, losing your shame and really just...
I curse, caveat.
Yeah. and living the most kind of vital and honest version of yourself. And so...
Did you say finalized?
No, vital and honest. But finalized.
Oh, vital.
Vital, yeah.
Yeah, I thought, it was funny. I thought you said finalized, and I was like, okay, no. I think you read a different book.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, absolutely not finalized.
Yeah, and so I mishear. I now have that. I hate bios. I find them, it's like the antithesis of proof of life, because bios feel to me like, look at everything I've done. Aren't I worthy? Even though I know we need them. And so now my bio is basically just like, she's deaf, she reads lips, she mishears everything, but what she hears is funnier, at least she thinks so. But I really do, like, and I usually hear it more perverted, but I thought you said finalized, and I was like, wow. No.
You got sent the wrong galley.
Vitalized, yeah.
So a bullshit story is something that I can really relate to. And so I'll also say that you have a glossary of terms that I love.
They let me do it.
And so I think a lot of our conversation can be kind of unpacking some of this terminology, because it is so central to your story, but it's also very applicable to so many other people's stories. And that's why we write books. We want to tell our own story, but we hope that other people see their stories in ours. So
I feel so emotional right now. It's amazing. It's like, in a good way, you know, which is the best, right? Like welled up. But anytime we make something and someone like took the time, it's such an honor. I never take it for granted. Do you know what I mean? It's like they took the time to hold it, to I feel seen. That's what it is. And that's I don't know, that's everything. And if we allow for that, it sometimes just like takes your breath away. So thank you.
Well, not to get sidetracked, but I interviewed a woman named Sharon Brous. At one point, do you know who she is? She's a rabbi here at
Sharon
Brous.
Yes, I've heard of her. I don't know her in person.
Yeah, she runs this Jewish community called
But I love rabbis. I love women rabbis, especially.
She's a badass. And she gave me one tip, which is err on the side of showing up.
God, I love that.
Yeah.
That's such a rabbi thing, too.
A totally rabbi thing to say. So I try to err on the side of showing up, even if that's holding someone's book or listening to it. So bullshit stories. So what does that mean? And maybe you can ground that in your own bullshit story.
Sure.
Yeah.
Whew. Everyone has them, but also, who am I to say everyone? I don't know everyone. But my guess is, you know, everyone has them. Although, you know, my son's little still, and it's so interesting watching, like, when they develop, right? Because there's a certain point where like they're still so confident and full of them love, and then something shifts, right? But the classic, my sort of most primal bullshit story, which I feel so like I've beaten to death talking about, but it's important, is I am a bad person. And it's funny because I used to not be like, just now I found myself looking away just because like intimacy was terrifying to me. But I used to not be able to let people look me in the eye. And I don't mean that. I mean, I would like dart my eyes around the room, and that's because I was afraid they would say I was a bad person. And so, you know, I was 8 when my dad died. He was my person. And we had a fight because he said he was going to stop smoking. And my dad had a cigarette and another one lit. He smoked 80 a day, 4 packs. And I flushed him down the toilet. And so he said, "You're being bad and making me not feel good." And I said, "You always break your promises. I hate you." Last thing I ever said to him. And so, you know, when I wanted to die, and instead of anything, I just said, "I don't care." And I locked my jaw, and that was that. And I couldn't access my emotions, nothing, which is why only 3 years ago, literally, July 2022, I was able to cry again after a lifetime of being emotionally constipated, which is why I welcome when I said I feel emotional. But so at that moment, I literally, first of all, the mantra was be strong, which is another bullshit story. Like, I have to be strong. Like, I decided I was the man of the house now. I had to be an adult. I was treated like an adult. And so, for whatever, and also, I guess, you know, in a way, that's what saved me in its own way. But I am a bad person. I decided, and I walked through the world with that every day, all day, just my knowing. And that's the great bullshit story. But you know, a lot are coming up right now for me, like in the pre-publication, which you know about. There's a lot of pressure on the author, and there's a lot of you know, if whatever evidence we're looking for, we're fine, right? So I'm pretty careful to be mindful about what evidence am I looking for, right? Like, oh, beauty, love. But if I'm out of alignment, I can start looking around for evidence that I suck or I'm a bad person. So like right now, there's a lot of like ignoring, or no, you're not, you know, famous enough to be, whatever, all the stuff that's coming up. And it brings up like, wah, wah, I suck. And so they can reemerge. But bullshit stories are things that are simply not true, that we hold on to and walk through the world as if they're true. And for some, like the I am bad one, I mean, it wasn't a bullshit story. It was simply part of me, you know? It was, there was no way to separate it from me.
Yeah.
What I love about this tattoo I have that says, I got you, or I got you people. I think when we rely solely on external validation, it's a recipe for misery and disaster. But I do think it's so important. So when we have someone like what I think you and Skylar have, like the person in front of you who really sees you and gets you and reminds you who you are, and lovingly, keyword lovingly, shakes your shoulders, and they're like, bullshit story. Bullshit story.
Yeah. It's
so helpful. And that's why it's so important who we surround ourselves with. But bullshit, I mean, people walk around with ones like Gay Hendricks, dear friends of mine, Gay and Katie, they talk about your unconscious commitments, you know. So one of mine, my dad dropped dead when he was 38. My mom was 34, is like, I'm always going to have to hustle. And that is such a default. And I like actively work every day to put that down. And so it's like, oh, do I have an unconscious commitment to that? But so bullshit stories are you know, I want to live a life that lights me up. I want to be who I say I am. And so in what way are these beliefs, these limiting beliefs, whatever you want to call it, I believe we have to find our own language. Like bullshit stories works for me. If you're someone who's like, I can't curse, find your own language.
Yeah.
But they're what holds us back from fully expressing ourselves, from not to sound corny, but shining our light fully.
Yeah.
Without apology.
Yeah. And we reinforce these stories. So as I was reading it, I was asking myself, what's my bullshit story?
Yeah.
Right? And
Well,
I think
they change a lot too.
Well, and it's also, I think it's really interesting what you bring up. It's not like you burn the effigy of your bullshit story and it's gone forever.
Thank you.
It's sort of, it hides in the shadows, even if you've done a lot of the work. So my bullshit story, I'm fat and no one will like me. I still look in the mirror and I see fat Jeff. Okay?
That makes my heart, someone who had an eating disorder or just who had it, like that just makes my heart break when people can't. And beside even the external stuff, that no one will like me, it's like,
whatever. I've been all sorts of different weights
sure,
throughout my whole life.
It's not about that though.
No, it's not about that.
It's the fact that no matter what, like we can't see ourselves clearly so often.
And for so long, my sense of identity was anchored in that story that I told myself about myself every day. So it was part of this psychological continuity that
I love that psychological continuity.
Yeah, where you wake up and you're essentially reinforcing that every day. So I'm the same guy that I was yesterday. I'll be the same guy tomorrow inside of this bullshit story. And I just think that so many people have their customized version of that they just reinforce every day. And so we have to tear that scaffolding down.
Absolutely. And it's like what I was talking about, the evidence thing, right? And it's, that all these like expressions like, yeah, find what you're looking for, but it's true. And I don't mean that in a kind of trite way, like, just look for the positive and it's there. But I mean, if you're looking for evidence you suck, I will never, and I will die on this hill, I will never go on Amazon or Goodreads and read reviews. I am far too sensitive. I'm like, are you a masochist? But
I do that.
Yeah, you're nuts. Jeff, you're nuts.
Yeah.
But if I wanted evidence I suck, all I got to do, because I know, and I will ruminate and, or someone won't, will write back. Like you'll ask someone a question and they just write back no. And for whatever reason, that feels like no emoji after you make up a story, right? And so all of a sudden it's like, oh God, everyone hates me. Start looking around for evidence.
Yeah. Well, this is where our suffering is so often just phantoms of our own projection day to day, right? You create stories that simply don't exist, and then you become anxious about those stories.
And what, my first book, this isn't a spoiler, ends with the words, now what? And I'm not reinventing the wheel, neither are you, neither is anyone. I used to be so obsessed with Wayne Dyer. I love you, Wayne. And Wayne was, regurgitating, and we're all, borrowing, but now what? Because I want to have a shirt that says being self-aware is overrated. So I'm 6.5 months sober. And in the car, I was telling Henry, I lead retreats in Italy, and I don't know what you call it, but I'm preemptively grieving September because I'm not going to be able to have wine. And I'm like, wait, Jen, you're here now. But
you know what that's called?
What?
It's called a negative anticipated memory.
Oh my God, I've been dying to know. Thank you, Jeff.
It's not me. I think that's Daniel Kahneman. But it's often where we brood over something in the past and then we project that thing into the future. We're creating a negative memory before we've even had it.
It's also because, since I've gotten sober, what I was saying to him in the car is, I wish I didn't tell people. Like, and part of the reason I did announce it was, and I'm not going to drink, but it doesn't mean I don't want to. I'm not going to lie about that. It doesn't mean that I have things come up, but I'm like, I kind of wish I didn't say anything because then, but it's also because the association, like I couldn't go out to dinner for a long time because as an adult, I don't think I'd ever gone out to dinner and not ordered alcohol. And so it was like, it just didn't work in my brain, the association. And so I associate Italy and my, it's, it's embedded. It's one and the same.
Yes.
And I don't remember how I segued into that because ADD, but somehow I
Yeah, you're
did.
grieving for the future.
Yeah, but something you said preempted. I don't
That's
know.
okay.
But it'll in the car on the way. I'll go.
You'll be
I
like,
remember.
yeah, punch her in later. So I mean, you wrote this book within a extremely tumultuous context.
Yeah. I don't even, I mean, part of me is like, wait, I wrote that? I don't know. Have you ever had that experience, either you feel channeled or whatever it is, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, how the fuck did I do that?
How did you summon the self-confidence at that time when, okay,
I didn't. I mean,
yeah.
it's so interesting because this book had many different titles. Proof of Life is really, really important to me because many years ago, I was writing an essay about when I used to wait tables. And I remember, and it was in hindsight, I was thinking about, but I thought I was going to be a poet. I was at NYU. I thought I was going to live in Iowa and wear sweaters and like be in academia. And right before senior year, I took a semester off. That semester's still going on. And I got a summer job at the newsroom, the restaurant I worked at for 14 years, the summer job. And I didn't write. I didn't do any of the things that I was going to do. And I always knew that I always knew I was a writer. A bullshit story was that I didn't get to for all the reasons. But Proof of Life, I remember writing this essay about the waitressing and having this panic attack one time when I was waitressing. I mean, maybe I had been there. I started working there when I was 24. I stopped when I was 21. I stopped when I was maybe 34, where I was in the back. Waiters used to go smoke. And I was like, what have I done? And it was a panic attack because I was going to be the scholar. And then, and in my mind, I thought I was stuck. I thought it was old. It breaks my heart now.
Yeah.
Neither of those things. So later writing the essay, I thought, oh, what have I done? I have done love. And that's like the print I gave you. So I sold this book. A year passed. I didn't know leaving my marriage was going to take up. How would I know? We don't have a handbook.
Yeah.
A year passed. Not only had I not written it, I hadn't even started it. I had no money. I had canceled all these retreats. I was painting. I had just started painting. I don't know how to draw a stick figure. I started painting like a maniac. It became my medicine. And I looked around and I had, again, one of those panic attacks. And I was like, oh my God, what have I done? I have nothing to show for this year. But I caught myself. And I went, oh my gosh, Jen, you're doing that thing again. It's the thing of I have nothing to show for myself. I have nothing to show. And I realized how many of us walk around with that belief that look how relevant, look how many followers I have, look what I have to show.
So this really, I think, gets to the heart of a lot of it, because how do you lose that shame, A, and how do you lose the feeling that, oh, well, it's just too late for me?
Yeah.
Because I think
God, that's a bullshit story. I know I'm like, now everyone's like, she does have ADD. Well, I told you. Duh. She is deaf. Again, I told you. I'm taking off my shoes so I can be more comfortable and sit cross-legged. So I segued before. The confidence thing is like, I don't know. And I spent a long time not doing it until I painted my way in. But how do you lose it? You get out of your own way. And I don't know how you do that because I believe in something I call TSOWW, which is the school of whatever works.
Right.
Barring you're not intentionally hurting yourself or anyone else. Because what works for Jeff, what works for me is different in terms of keeping us in alignment or whatever it is, right? Yoga, or some days it's just laughing with my son or writing or painting. So you get out of your own way as best as you can. And what I was saying about being self-aware is overrated is because all the things we were talking about, like the bullshit stories, we may know it up here, certain things, and yet it doesn't matter until we now what, right? Until we embody it. So finding a way to get out of your own way. But I think the school of whatever works is like, okay, also who you're surrounding yourself with. And I don't just mean in person, I mean online, I mean all of it. Are they reflecting back to you who you really are? You know, I had a relationship for a couple years in my late 20s, and he reflected back to me, basically, I was a piece of shit and I was unworthy. And I believed that. So I stayed, and thank God I got away. But you know, are you surrounding yourself with people who support you? And I don't mean lie to you, but like really see you. But there's all sorts of ways, you know, that get you out of your own way. And you know, throughout this book, I offer tools and exercises and things I did to help me, and painting was one of them. That became my medicine. So, and as far as the shame, and I think you'll appreciate this, you know, I nearly died from an eating disorder. So shame loss as opposed to weight loss feels so empowering to me. And shame loss it's a daily or daily-ish practice. It's not like I killed shame, it's gone forever. It's like, okay, today I'm going to put it down. And it's remembering, you know, the world, we need you. Your voice, and whether you're a writer or not doesn't matter. It's your you-ness. There's no other you. The magic of you, you know, and there's nothing that you can show. It's like, look at me. It's like your you-ness is invisible, but all of our you-ness is special and magical and weird and wonderful. But we get in our head like, oh, it's been done before, or no, it hasn't. No, it hasn't. And the it's too late stuff is the greatest bullshit story, because that's the ITG, the imaginary time gods.
Right. So this was one of your glossary terms that I immediately resonated
I mean,
with.
I'm gonna kill those motherfuckers.
Because I worship that God daily.
I mean, but look,
So, yeah,
I'm a woman.
Unpack that a little bit. The imaginary time gods.
Yeah.
'Cause this is a big deal for a lot of people, particularly like people in mid-age, where they're
Well,
like,
yeah,
okay.
and particularly women. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
a woman. That's my lived experience. But women. I mean, I have the chills even when I when I get a download. You know, but. You know, like, you know, I wrote my first book, I was 44 when it came out. It's like, whoa, that's late. I remember I bought my house, and my aunt in New Jersey was like, it's about time. Or, you know, there's this thing, even if it's not spoken, but kind of at birth, that's like fed most families. I mean, I had a very untraditional single mom childhood, but this is when you do things, this is, you know, if I'm like leading a workshop, let's say there's 100 women, and I'll go, how many of you feel like you're behind? 90% of them raise their hand. Fascinating. Behind in what? I don't know. The ones that don't usually are older women that have gotten to the point of less fucks given. But there's this sense of like, I'm behind. And according to who? Whose timeline are we living by? And there is no timeline. Oh, I'm too late. For what? For who? We get to make up the rules. You know, we are our own proof of life. We have to be our own permission slip. And so much of it is just fear-based and stuff that we're bought into, bullshit stories. And so we have to be the ones that break that cycle.
Yeah. I mean, society and culture is so structured that, okay, you finish your education when you're 22, if you're lucky.
Oops.
Right? And then the rest of your life just becomes, you know, an exercise in being a specialist at whatever you've gotten trained in.
Right. Or like you're supposed to know at 18 what you want.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that we carry around that lack of possibility.
Thank you. Thank you. That's why I love the land of possibility. That's where I live now.
That's right.
Except when I don't.
Right, when the ITGs start biting
Oh
at
my
your
God.
ankles. So let's talk about people and support for a minute, because you mentioned it before. And this
Because it's a big thing for me. I got you people.
Yeah, because you mentioned it, and this was another part of your glossary, and it's another place that I actually made a bunch of notes on.
By the way, the glossary thing, I had the idea a while ago, and ultimately it's like I make up the rules, but when you have a book deal with a big 5 publisher, you do and you don't. You have to, and the fact that they love the poetry is such a personal. I mean, because like that's what I thought I was going to do and I didn't get to do. But the glossary, the fact that they put it in there, it's like, I just love it because it adds levity, and it's such a fun thing. And so thank you for appreciating it.
Also just makes it very personal.
Yeah.
And your turns of phrase and the codification of those terms were just very like original and thought-provoking. So for me, I just kept going back to them.
Yay.
Yeah. And so this cohort of Got You people, right? So what's the signature of these people?
All right, I have a great example. By the way, it dawned on me, I took my shoes off and now that's going to be in the video. Is that just so tacky or what? My sneakers are down there?
I think it's character.
It's really on brand.
Yeah.
And you know what else is on brand? And at least I say it in the book, I was like, there's no such thing as perfect. Thank the gods of spell check, And I'm like doing the audiobook and I'm like, motherfucker, I caught quite a few typos that are going to be in there. So I just wanted to stay on brand.
There you go. There's no spell check here.
What did you say?
There's no spell check in the Commune.
I mean,
podcast.
I know. I just like though. I'm like, oh yeah, in the book, in the final book. So last night I went to this book event, like I told you, at Godmother's in Summerlin, and Molly Jong Fast, beautiful memoir, How to Lose Your Mother. I think it's in my bag, and we've never met in person, but we follow each other on Instagram. And I wanted to send her a galley, but I was like, oh, I'm going to see her. So I had a gift bag for her. I made her a painting. I gave her one of those prints, and I gave her my book. And she knew I was coming, and my son was there. And so she saw my book, and she goes, when's this coming out? And I told her, and she puts it down. She goes, what can I do? What can I do? And I was like, I almost started crying because that's what I do. And I don't know. I don't come across it that often. I was like, my friend was with me, and she clocked it. I go, she's one of us. That's what I mean. It's so she's operating, Molly, what a love, but from a place of enoughness, which is what I try to do every day because my baseline is lack. Mm-hmm. When your parent drops dead at 8 and you never metabolize that, of course, there's not enough. There's not enough. And so many, many years ago, I realized if I feel like that, then I have to be the enoughness. I have to prove there's enough. So I'm always like lifting other people up, even if they're doing the same thing, right? So that is an example. Now, we're not like best friends. I just met her in person, but she's not and said, what can I do? So I Got You people are I got you and doing love. It can look any kind of way. It doesn't have to be financial. It can be like showing up. Like what you just said, the rabbi said that.
Yeah. And showing up without needing to be asked to show up.
Yes. And I mean, there are so many ways. It's like, my friends would be like, where's the body? Where do we hide it? Those kind of like, I got you. And and it's also the people that really see you. Mm-hmm. And that I love, there's a meme I see a lot and it just makes me feel good. It's like, have the kind of friends that fight for you in rooms you're not in. Something to the effect of that, that. And and I found I'm not rich yet with money, but I'm very rich in relationships, and I don't take it for granted. And I really have cultivated, and I say cultivated because I nurture it. They must be nurtured relationships where, and it's by design, the people around me, but it's reciprocal, it's really reciprocal. And my tattoo that says I got you, the reason it's written this way and not any other way is so that when I read it or you read it, it's not upside down. Because I was known as the I got you lady because of my way of being and what have you. And it dawned on me maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, I was like, well, shit, I'm not an I got you for myself ever. And that's a big one. I think that's the hardest one for people.
Yeah, totally.
So, but I got you people are, you know, they show up and they, I think a lot of people operate from, and I get it, it's scary out there, but from a place of lack and fear. And so, well, if I'm happy for them, there's not enough for me. Or if I support them, then I won't have enough. And I got you people are not that.
Yeah.
Or even if they have that fear, they go, you're not true. And they show up anyway.
Yeah. Do you have a core group of I got you people?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do my best to be that in the world.
Yeah. What if you don't have that?
They're there.
There are they.
I don't buy that. I don't buy that. They're there. I say the secret, that's not a secret, to everything good that's happened in my life, and that's happening, is staying open. Not being open, because being open's wonderful, but then you get rejected or whatever, and you shut down. It's staying open. They're there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great question, because people have bullshit stories like that. They're just not there. And so they've already decided beforehand. So if you stay open and look, they're there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a money back guarantee.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll give you $1. But they're there.
Yeah.
And it's like, what, you think you've met everyone that's gonna love you already? You think you're done? You think you're cooked? You know? No, I don't have any.
Yeah.
Discover. And instead of being like depressed or overwhelmed about it, if you can flip it into a different perspective, like being excited about discovery. Okay, now I get to discover.
Yeah. I think one of the keys is also to engage in acts of service.
That's it. And curiosity. That's it. That's it. That's doing love.
Because if you lean into that, you will almost always find some
I would
sort
cut out almost.
Yeah. Some reciprocity, some mutuality. You'll also meet people
Yes.
that are
Yes.
the same and different, which is really like
Well,
the best
I mean,
people.
that you're absolutely right. And, you know, I love that you brought that up, the being of service. And I got really into that when I heard Wayne Dyer talk, you know, how may I serve? Which, again, he didn't reinvent the wheel. That's Jesus, right? I think. I'm a Jew. But
he was a nice Jewish boy.
What'd you say?
But he was a nice Jewish boy.
He was.
Yeah.
I mean, look, he was. He'd be mortified with, you know, what people are doing in the name of Christ. But I heard Wayne say that, and I was like, no, all I do is serve veggie burgers. No. But I really got clear on that. And then, but the other thing you hit the nail on the head with was the reciprocity. So I invite people to really look at your relationships. And if you're the one that's always pushing, if you're the one that's only showing up and there's not reciprocity, really take a look at that. And a lot of that is a self-worth thing, is we don't think we get to have reciprocity. And so we stay in, you know, another one I call the land of fine.
Right. Yeah.
And, you know, this book was going to be called You Get to Have This. And that was because I didn't think I got to be happy. So your this can be anything. And it's not like like I get to have this and you don't. It's whatever your inner asshole is telling you don't get to have. Reciprocity, ease, friendship, love, whatever you do. Because your birthright is not feeling bad or stress.
Yeah. And I love the analogy that you use, that permission doesn't arrive on a bus that you're waiting for.
I'm such a ding dong. Some of this stuff, it's like, am I a dad? I give like dad jokes, you know, but
that's why I probably like it so much. Yeah.
I swear to God, I'm going to have like a whole demographic of like dads. I'm not bad at it.
Totally.
My daddy issues, I'll be like, oh.
Right. I have a portfolio of dads now.
But it's true. We wait for it. And the irony is like, who's they? Who are we even waiting for? We don't even know. Or, you know, all the years I was pretending to be an actress at the newsroom, I was really waiting at the host stand for someone to discover me, truly. And then I got really clear. No, I was just waiting for someone to love me. But I got, right before my TED Talk, which my son gave me the title for, when apropos of nothing, he came up to me and said, Mommy, he was 8, nothing you do is wrong. what I really realized in February is I was waiting for someone to give me permission to stop hating myself, to stop being so hard on myself. Even with the drinking, I was waiting for someone to make me stop. And like, hey, no one's going to do that. Ever.
No.
No one can.
Yeah. There's a bit in the book with your son, and I think you're going through your divorce.
2 things at once.
Yeah. It's so good.
She wanted to cut that, my editor.
Really?
And not because it's, you know, it was a beautiful moment. I don't, I forget why. It was something like, maybe, I don't remember, but I said it's imperative because it's what my whole first book's about. And it's.
Well, I also think it's applicable to a broader societal conversation or lack of conversation that we're having right now.
Exactly.
Where everything is
Exactly. And imagine if all young people got that. And what you're talking about is, so essentially my son, I mean, he had to be 6, and his little best friend at the time, parents were divorced, horrible, like, you know, police, you know, just like awful, not friendly. And so that's his only association. And somehow we never mentioned divorce. And even though we were already kind of doing nesting, like leaving, it was no different than it was before. We were kind of always operating the same way. So he didn't really clock anything different until he started to, and he started to get upset. Like, I don't want you to get divorced. And my therapist said, okay, well, first you need to find out what he thinks divorce is. And then I realized, oh, his only idea of it is what he knows of it. And so I said, well, Charlie, you know, sometimes mommies and daddies do better as just friends. And he looked at me, and it was like I planted him. I paid him. Like, it was so perfect, like, to say this, you know. Yeah. He said, but mommy, you can't be 2 things at once. Meaning like divorced and friends, right? And I went, oh, honey. And I explained to him, and then no more upset ever again. So the upset was really that it wasn't that we were like necessarily breaking up. He was very aware that we weren't affectionate or certain, but it was that we wouldn't be friends. And once he got that, I was like, baby, you can be more than one thing. I said, you know, Grandpa Mel, he's never met my dad, of course. I said, you know, when Grandpa Mel, you know, I experienced deep grief often and deep joy at the same time. And you know, and I said a lot of things in language he'd understand, but he really got the idea that we have the capacity to hold more than one thing. And I thought it was such a gift to impart to a 6-year-old, and a great reminder for myself and other people. Yeah. We can hold more than one thing. Life isn't binary.
Yeah. And we can actually, and we must actually hold 2 opposing thoughts simultaneously.
We must.
Otherwise, we'll never solve any political conflagration.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to go there, but we're seeing a lot of it right now in the Middle East, like people, and it's fascinating. It's just like, you know, and it's happening on a you know, sort of collective scale. And you're right, the reminder for everyone, it's like life isn't binary. Human beings aren't.
Yeah, it's messy.
It's very messy, and we do have the capacity to hold more than one thing, and I believe we must be discerning with our capacity, but we're not just like, I can only be sad, I can only be, you know.
It's an interesting word that you use.
Discerning?
Yeah. How do you cultivate discernment?
Great question, Mr. Yogi. I think one of the big ways is everything I do now is about like being in your body because I'm an expert at it. You want to know why? Because most of my life I wasn't in it. Yeah. So I'm an expert at not being in the body, but because our body always tells us, you know. And as someone who spent their life escaping their body, I was never in tune with what I wanted, what I didn't want, you know. But when we really start paying attention, we know. Do we contract? Do we, whatever you want to call it, your gut, your intuition, but our body doesn't lie to us. But discernment is like, what do I want? How does that make me feel? And, often it requires a pause. Who knows how long that pause is? Maybe it's a breath, but a pause just to go, let me check in.
Yeah, I think that our emotional reactivity to certain situations and events tends to be hinged on our judgment, on our immediate judgment of it,
Yep.
and not the actual event itself. And so cultivating that space, the famous Viktor Frankl space, right, between stimulus and response, such that we are not immediately judging something and having an emotional reaction to that judgment.
I mean, it's so classic because, my editor kept, wanting me to add stuff about breath and all this. And,
Yeah.
and I'm so glad I did, because at the end of the day, it really, metaphorically and literally, it's about taking the breath, the pause. And it's like, what you said about we're judging it, and it's also we're relating to the past, what happened then instead of what's right in front of us. But if we actually pause, and again, whatever that means for you individually, whether it's a breath, whether it's just a moment to check in, and the more in tune we are with our body, I think the quicker actually it is our knowing, our paying attention, And then it's about autonomy and the permission slip of like, no, being able to say no. Or, when I was writing about leaving my marriage, I was thinking about all the people, right? All the people. It's worse than you think, Jen. They're not thinking about you at all. All the people that were going to be like, well, your husband was lovely. And he's so lovely, Robert. Like, what was wrong? What, my want is enough. Like, I want to end that's enough, right? Meaning, I don't have to explain or justify. And as we become more aligned and comfortable or even uncomfortable living unapologetically, and I'm not talking about hurting other people or being an outward asshole, but I mean really going, does that make me feel good? Do I want to do that? Is that a full body yes, as my friend Katie Hendricks would say?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, reading the book, I was asking myself the question, what am I settling for?
I love how active you were interacting with it.
Well, so you write a book, the second you press send, it's not your book anymore.
Oh, I know that.
It's everybody else's book.
I know that.
Right? So
I know
you
that.
might have a very specific point of view here, but the second it's out in the world, it becomes everyone else's experience.
Absolutely.
Right? So my experience with it, of course, then becomes solipsistic.
No, but what I mean is like you really, as the rabbi said, you really showed up, because there are people who read it, but wouldn't take the pause. So I'm very appreciative of that.
But that's the point. So
where are you settling?
Where am I settling? and then by extension, I'm like, where is everybody just settling in their
right,
own
but
life?
we don't even get to say, like, it's sort of like, I can't say, like, I'm like, well, Jeff, it seems like you're settling, right? It's like, I gotta, And I was very careful in this book. I mean, of course, nervous for all the reasons, but also it's personal and Robert and all the things. Yeah. But I think I did a pretty good job of painting him lovingly. But I never said I wanted more. I said I wanted something different. And I was very, very clear on that. Because it wasn't settling necessarily. It was, I denied myself everything. And so that's another way to be discerning is really just to tap into our wants and needs. And the longer we ignore them or are disconnected, we don't even, what needs, what wants,
So this is a little bit personal, but it came up as I was...
Like I can't handle that.
Like I know. So I wasn't going to necessarily ask it, but now I feel comfortable enough. Are there times where you worry or fear being judged by this book? and being like, oh, Jen is just selfish. She made the selfish choice.
Yeah, I've thought about so I'm very clear on one thing. There's going to be people. There always are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's why I don't need to go on Amazon and Goodreads. I know. No, I mean, I'm serious. Like,
Yeah.
I know me, right?
Yeah.
But I did think, okay, I have to be okay with not being liked. And we know that up here, not everyone's going to like us. And yet and still, I want everyone to like me. Like, no one, like, actively is like, I want people to not like me. But I was thinking about it the other day because, sure, yeah, I mean, but then I'm also like, and so it is. That's my
Yeah.
other tattoo in Charlie's handwriting. And so it is.
Yeah.
And that's really, that was me going, you know what? That's shame loss. It's not that I feel, oh, I owe my followers, which I hate that word. Like I need to, the minute I left my marriage, I have to announce it. No, it's just that I won't hide in shame.
Yeah.
So do I worry? It's not, I know that it's going to be the case. And also, okay, I don't want to get a letter in my mailbox like I have before, which is weird. Like in my personal mailbox, someone found my address and sent me a letter, like my life is their business, you know, about how wrong I was. And, you know, you can not do that. But of course that crossed my mind. And that's okay, because at the end of the day, I can lay my head down and say, I told the truth. And I didn't hide in shame, or I didn't slant things so that I would be more liked.
Yeah. Well, this is interesting because you write about fearless-ish.
Which is, Will's hat said fearless. I love it. Yeah, fearless-ish.
So you didn't say like, oh, I don't give a shit what anyone else says or thinks.
Oh my God, I can't.
Right?
Do you know anyone, besides maybe Trump, who doesn't care? Well, he does. Do you know anyone that doesn't care what people think, besides maybe like sociopaths?
Right.
Seriously, I'm asking. Do you? Like care what anyone thinks?
No.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I know people that are more stoic, if you will, than others.
Well, I think it's about like, are you letting your life be dictated by that? Are you letting it immobilize you? But
yeah. But I think what you are saying is that you see a little bit of fear. You can recognize that a little bit of fear is appropriate.
I mean, and even if it, like, who's to say what's appropriate? Even if it's not, it's like, yeah, I'm afraid, and I'm going to do it anyway.
Right.
And some days I don't, and that's okay too.
Yeah. That actually, let me rephrase there, that I think courage actually requires a little dollop of fear in it.
Yes. I could not agree more. I did a thing recently with my friend Paulina Porskova, who's amazing, and someone asked her about what courage is, and I believe that she said something to that, you know, it's that. And we're not, I don't think you and I are talking about like being unsafe, like, yes, as a woman, walk through a dark alley in the middle of the night, not that kind of stuff, but yeah, you know, of course it's I'm afraid and I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah. I think fear can be positive in the sense of awe and respect. Like we need to sort of fear the mountain before we scale it, because it provides us with that degree of judgment and discernment.
Absolutely. It also is like, oh, I'm alive.
Yeah, right.
Which is better than the alternative. But it dawned on me a bunch of years ago, you know, when people are like, you know, or they, you know, the trite things people say, just be fearless.
Right.
And it's like, no, first of all. And I've always said, and maybe I'm wrong, I'm often wrong, but I don't know anyone who's fearless except a sociopath, like truly fearless. Because think about it, being without complete fear, but the rest of us, and it's a spectrum, but the rest of human beings, like, have varying degrees of fear, vacillates, but...
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the Stoics see their four primary virtues as inseparable from each other. So courage, wisdom, justice, and temperance or moderation. They say you can't really be courageous without a sense of justice or wisdom, for example, because otherwise it's courage in the name of what? For what?
I mean, it's exactly that. And so fearless-ish, and I love the idea of ish because I just always felt like an ish person. Like even when I walked in, I was like, I was on the outskirts. I always admired, you guys, and I'm like, in the ish of the yoga and the ish of, so I like the idea of like no one fits in a box anyway, but it's like ish.
Yeah, you're an iconoclast, or I mean, I feel the same way, but then I find myself being a contrarian to the contrarian sometimes.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's just the impulse is to push myself to the circumference, to the edge of the circle.
Yeah.
Where I'm more comfortable looking in at the circle than being in the middle of the circle. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting because, when I was saying about your writing and you said, I cultivated it I started it during COVID, and I was like, nah, maybe, but you've always been, because there's a sensibility you have, it's always been in you, whether you didn't actually write down or not. But I think that's the writer in you, the like being on the circumference, because the way you're able to what's the word I'm looking for? Not transcribe, but the way you're able to it's going to come to me later. Communicate, for lack of a better word, what you see, what you feel, what have you. So much of that is observation.
It's funny. I've made this observation about parenthood to myself, anyways, where when you become a parent, you're essentially pushed out of the nucleus of the atom, right? And you become an electron sort of swirling around the outside, looking back in at the nucleus, being like, okay.
I love that.
And in many ways, for the last 20 years since I've been a parent, I have felt sort of expelled out into an outer shell, kind of looking in at life, in this case personified in my daughters, but mostly, but just more generally as a witness. And
what a gift.
It is a gift. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to be with all my girls tonight. My eldest is flying in right now. My middle one is graduating from high school. And just to revel in that moment.
I mean, I was just talking to my dad, a crazy person, on the car on the way here. And what I wouldn't give to have those moments, just what a gift.
Yeah.
Or to have had, I mean, but.
Yeah. Well, I often say my daughters are the trees I have planted that I will never sit under, because there they go,
Yeah, there they go.
It's okay.
Exactly. Even though it hurts and like, I don't, but I do. I don't want you to go, but I do.
Yeah. Well, I often feel that way when I'm writing, because the ones that are still around, they'll come and bother me.
Of course.
And I relish that. I revel in the bothering.
Preaching to the choir, but also you're like...
But I also can't wait for them to leave. And there is this chiaroscuro to the whole thing.
Totally relate. I mean, my son's little, so mommy. And yet I'm so aware of totally get it.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about the utility of flexibility and being able to bend.
And I know you don't mean in the yoga room.
Yeah. Although there's, I'm sure, a good metaphor.
I think it's everything, I mean, I'm notorious for my spontaneity. And I like to think it's like one of my great qualities. And then the more I think about it, it's actually, it's a lot of it's a trauma response, because I was never until very recently able to plan, and I mean even plan like a month out. When your parent drops dead, again, when you're little and you never deal with it, I just like a panic. I can't explain it. I didn't visualize myself as dead, but I could not visualize a future ever. Not even like a little bit in the future. And so even when people are like, you want to make plans for, I do much better with what are you doing right now? So I love spontaneity, but flexibility, I pride myself on being easy and sometimes too easy, which is something I'm working on. Like saying, having more, valuing myself more, that I don't like always have to give in or what have you, but like not getting my knickers in a twist over things that they don't need to be. But and I don't exaggerate when I say that my whole life until I left my marriage, I believed with every part of me that change equaled death. Hands down. I can't describe what that death would be, but like 100%. And I would stay miserable. I would stay fine. As long as I didn't have to change. So it's very interesting to me that I'm so spontaneous, but in some ways, I'm very, very flexible. I'm like, yeah, whatever. But in other ways, I still have to battle with, I don't want anything to ever change because that's what keeps me safe. Even though in my brain, which is a bad neighborhood, I know it's a complete false sense of safety, right? But I mean, look, the big joke is like nothing ends up looking like we thought it was going to. All the years that I was, controlling my grief or found control by being anorexic or whatever. It's like all of that is it's ways that we think that we've like, hacked life. Like I'm evading feeling or bad things happening or whatever, instead of just being with the I don't know-ness of it all.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think sense of humor is the most important thing to me. One of them, and that and flexibility go hand in hand. I mean, you gotta have a sense of humor about life. If you don't, I think you're fucked.
Yeah. I mean, in so many ways, it's like, and the funny thing about something that's funny is that the moment that we try to understand why it's funny, it's not funny anymore.
I mean, right?
So it's something that actually has to be completely extemporaneous.
I know.
And I think that's why it's so freeing, and reduces cortisol and all those other things as well, because it actually is something that can only be experienced in the moment right here. And
I think flexibility is I used to teach at a yoga studio in Hollywood, one of my very first teaching jobs 800 years ago, called Liberation Yoga.
Okay.
And I remember finding this book, and I opened it, and I dropped it. I was like, oh! And the sentence said, expect to be delighted. And I was like, what is that? As someone who always expected to be disappointed.
Yeah.
And it changed my life. So I really started attempting that.
Yeah. Well, we crave a degree of certainty.
We crave what?
A degree of certainty in our lives.
Yeah.
Right? And
again, because it makes us feel safe, right?
Absolutely. And so there's like a tree metaphor here, where it's
you
like
and the trees.
We want to be the oak tree, right? It has really strong boughs, but really when you analyze an oak tree under a heavy snow, those boughs will eventually snap. But if you're a willow tree, right, and you have flexible boughs, right, the boughs will flex, the snow will just slough off, and the boughs will bounce back.
Yeah.
And this is where, there is that strength requires a degree of bending.
I know. I mean, and that's why yoga, which I need to get back into my practice, but that is why it's such a wonderful metaphor and also not metaphor, because, all the things, that you hear yoga teachers say, and you want to roll your eyes because they all say it, but are so apropos and true about like finding that flexibility. It doesn't mean that you necessarily can touch your toes or anything, but it's being able to then take that into the rest of your life. I used to, when I would teach, sense of humor is so important to me. But also, I would be in class, especially when I became a yoga teacher, and I was like, "Oh my God, everyone's looking at me." Yeah, right. um,
Yeah.
But I would, because I couldn't hear, I would be the one, like, she'd be like, Warrior 2, and I would be in tree. And so when I started teaching, it was so important to me to have a sense of humor because of that experience, the way that I felt, like always doing the quote unquote wrong thing because I couldn't hear. So, having a sense of humor and being able to be flexible, it's also about expecting to be delighted because we don't know. We don't know. We decide beforehand, but like if we roll with it, as it were, what magic can unfold if we stay open. But if we're so attached to, well, it was supposed to go that way. Well, good luck.
Yeah.
And imagine all that we're missing.
Yeah. Or if it doesn't go the way that we expected, we say, sorry, right? So you have a whole sorry jar, right?
I know. It's so funny. I thought I talked about that more in the book, but I guess I forgot. But the sorry bank is where you Venmo me, Jennifer Pastiloff. No, you Venmo anyone. But the idea is like you hold yourself accountable, and then you could donate the money, but $5 or pay them every time you give an unnecessary sorry.
Yeah.
Now, that does not mean never apologize, because the art of apologizing is beautiful and it's important. But, I'm really good at not apologizing, except the amount of times I apologize for my deafness and not being able to hear, it's off the charts. And it's just ingrained. And then people do it back. I go, I'm sorry. And they go, oh, I'm sorry. I go, no, I'm sorry. And I'm like, why are we apologizing? But so
do you still do that?
Yeah, I don't even realize it because I don't present as the way people typically think a deaf person. I'm small D deaf. I don't operate in deaf culture, ASL. But so they're like, it's just and then I feel bad. I have to ask them to repeat it. But the amount of times people apologize for taking up space or for being vulnerable or having emotion or whatever. And the idea is to have a sense of humor about it, because it's like if the $5 thing doesn't break the bank, hopefully it'll break your habit.
Yeah. I have a funny story. So my wife, Skylar, starred in Children of a Lesser God.
Wow.
And so she had to learn ASL. And she immersed herself. This was when she was an actor. I
forgot that she was in that. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, this was a very, very long time ago.
Was that 84? No.
Yeah, she was like basically that long ago. And so when I met her, I knew this about her. And of course I was, pursuing her with great chivalry at that juncture.
Worked.
Right? So
spoiler alert.
As a college kid, I devoted a weekend. I don't think I would ever do this again. And as a college kid, you're hungover as fuck on the weekends, right?
Or as an adult.
Or as an adult, fair enough. But this was like 2 full 8-hour days, Saturday and Sunday. I went from Columbia to the Lower East Side.
Don't tell me you were learning ASL.
Yeah, I know. So I did a full weekend ASL workshop. I remember it was like on St. Mark's Place. I had to get from the Upper West Side. Wow. And to sit in this like fluorescent.
Jeff, that's amazing.
Fluorescent room. I think I was 17 years old. And like long hair, rumpled flannel, back of the room, but like learning, and then just to be able to like take her out on the next date and be like, look, I can do the alphabet and whatever.
Okay, that's so moving. But also, we're going to need to edit it, people, because you said, I don't think I'd ever do it again. You're going to have to go, I would never do that again. That was only, she's the only person I would ever do that for.
There you go. Again. I would do it for her. That's true.
That's so beautiful, though. I love that. That is again, what a way to show up. What a way to, that moves me so much.
Yeah. A young boy will do anything. to
Not
get into
true.
a hot girl's
Not
pants.
true, Jeffrey. Is Jeffrey your full name?
Yeah.
Not true.
Only my mother calls me Jeffrey.
Well, I'm a Jewish mom, friend,
There you
so
go.
not true. It's not true. And that you're still together and so full of love. And yeah, you can downplay and say young boy would, but no, not true. That is commitment. That is like, that is your knowing. Like there was something in you that were like, that's my person.
Yeah. Did you ever train in any comedy?
No, I'm just naturally funny.
See, that's the best answer you could have ever given. Or like Second City or any improv or anything?
No, once a long, long time ago, I did, I think, something for the Groundlings, and I was so bad. It was amazing. Even when I was pretending to be an actor, and I say pretending because I did nothing. I didn't, it was like I was like waiting for it to come to me, hilariously. But, in acting class, always the note was, you're too in your head. I'm a writer, really, so no wonder. But no. But now, Henry, my partner, is a very successful actor, but we improv a lot, and I'm always better. But
just saying.
It's funny. I love comedy is my everything. My father was the funniest person. To this day, people, Philadelphia like shut down when he died, and people will be like, Mel Pastiloff was the funniest person. He died in '83. They've met a lot of people. And he still, stand-up is not something I would ever do, but improv, because I love bouncing impulses with people, because I love connection.
Yeah, the dance.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's like being a person, and people who don't have a sense of humor frighten the hell out of me. Like I want to run. I get so nervous. Or people who take themselves too seriously.
Who do you love to read? You have a lot of amazing people.
Yeah, I get so nervous with all of a sudden, like someone asked that, and I'm like, Dr. Seuss? Oh my God. I haven't ever read a book. It's so weird.
He's my primary care physician.
There's this really great book called Good Stress.
Oh, no. Yeah.
But I'm not kidding. So, okay. Kiese Layman. Bow the fuck down. I believe he's absolutely one of our greatest living writers. He blurred my book, so.
There you go.
I'm biased, but this is not biased. Lydia Yuknavitch, who, her latest book, Reading the Waves, is so beautiful. But Chronology of Water, her memoir, just premiered at Cannes because Kristen Stewart directed it, directorial debut. Anne Lamott, I love. My friend Josh Brolin, who's an actor, but what a writer. Blows me away. His memoir, Under the Truck, is so beautiful and not at all what you would think if you're like movie star memoir. It's like a poem. I will fight him to the death that like you're a poet. It's a poem. That book is so, so beautiful. Jasmine Ward, oh my gosh, amazing. A ton of poetry. I love poetry. I'm trying to think of what books are by my bedside.
Yeah.
So I have
This
Molly
is like
John.
you're populating my summer reading list right here.
Ocean Byung Oprah just picked his latest book, The Emperor of Gladness. So I'm reading that. I'm also listening. So, it streams into my hearing aids. But a lot of times like some words I miss. So I like to also have the book. And then Molly Jong Fast book I just bought, How to Lose Your Mother. I'm trying to think what else. I need to start reading more again. I think it's a habit, and I used to be such a readaholic and attention and all the other things, and I realized how much time I waste looking at my phone, and so it's really something I'm recommitting to. It's like, get back into that, losing yourself in a book.
There was a Herman Melville quote that
I never read Moby Dick.
Yeah, so this was from Moby Dick, actually.
I figured,
Yeah, there's some other good, Bartleby the Scrivener or something. Or Billy Budd.
Look at you.
Yeah.
Bragger. Just kidding.
Well, anyways. But that sort of bubbled up from under the crust of consciousness while I was reading the book. there's a quote from Melville. I'll try to get it, which is, okay. For as the appalling sea surrounds this verdant land, so in the heart of man lies an insular Tahiti.
An insular Tahiti?
Full of joy and peace, but encompassed by all the horrors of a half-known life.
Oh, a half-known life. Kill me now.
Well,
first of all, the fact that you just conjured that up, like you can, like, you're like reading it in your mind's eye, was amazing.
Well, but
he's all, I have it like a note
yeah,
there.
it's written on the other side of this beam. No, but that's what I felt in the book, which is encompassed by all the horrors of the half-known life. That you transcended that you did it.
Oh my God. That's like, Mary Oliver, Queen Mary Oliver. And Ross Gay. I wanted to say Ross Gay. He's another one to read. But Mary Oliver's poem, When Death Comes, the last line, I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. And Wayne Dyer used to always say, don't die with your music still inside of you. And that, you just gave me, I don't know if compliment's not the right word, but wow. I hope, because I don't want to end up simply having been a visitor in the world. And yeah, the half-lived life. And that's why this book, feels like a call to action in a way of like, wake up, like really wake up. And it, and again, it sounds so eye-rolly, like just be yourself. Like, well, who else am I going to be? But without apology. And but I'm not talking about, hurting other people intentionally or yourself, but really like, and go out and discover, like the painting thing. Yeah. It was a few years ago and it was an accident and I don't know what I'm doing. And that's the beauty in it. And I had to pull over, no kidding. I was listening to Queen Krista Tippett. That's my like pie in the sky on being, but I heard Rick Rubin. I heard him say something, I'm gonna bastardize what he was saying, but I was like, oh my God, this is me. But he was talking, I think, about when he was younger. He started very young and he didn't really know what he was doing. And because of that, the gift in that is like with my painting. I don't know if this is good. Fuck good. There is no good. I don't know if it's done. I say it is. There's no parameters because I don't know what I'm doing.
Right. Well, you have no ego attached to it.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Well, but you know what I mean. A little tiny ego.
But yes. And so I try to take that into my writing because I make it all about play.
Yeah. So
my stepdad goes, Jack, he's my person. I love him. He's like, I really love, a lot of it I don't understand. Some of it I don't like, but he's the only one I'm able to like not get in my head and ruminate on stuff he says because he's Jack. Mm-hmm. But he's like, you know what I think you should do? I think you should get a committee of some of your people, your trusted advisors, and show them your art and ask them which ones you should post. And I said, oh, no. I said, you don't understand. The feedback that I get and the things that and not that it's about other people, but for reference, when people reach out or buy my art, which is amazing, is the freedom. It's the very thing that is not that. So if I were to do that, it becomes about what they want. And I already have that with, essentially even with the book. Because, at the end of the day, I have a book deal. There's certain things I have to, and this is purely from the heart. It's because I want, right? Your want is enough. It's about play and the freedom of, it has nothing. One day Henry looked at my art and then he said, how do you want me to feel when I look at this? And I paused and I went, actually, I don't care. And I said, it was a great epiphany. And I said, I don't say that to be an asshole. I said, I cared about how I felt when I made it. It's about, and it was such a revelation. Oh,
yeah.
It's about how I feel when I make it.
Yeah. Yeah. So connected to that, for me, I taught myself how to play jazz piano.
Of course you did.
Teaching myself how. It was actually November 9th, 2016, I think is the date, connected to an election. And I have a story connected to that. But regardless, I was committed to learning one standard a week, something from the old American songbook. Because for me, that's what made America great in the first place. One of the things.
Sure.
Was like we had our indigenous music written by all sorts of people, but primarily African American people.
There's a certain president I hope would listen to you speak. Anyway.
But this was the music that really brought our country together. We would listen to it on the radio for generations and generations. We all knew these songs, Satin Doll and Rodgers and Hart songs and Duke Ellington and Billy Strayhorn and all that stuff. So Fats Waller, I said, I'm just going to learn these songs.
You're so cool.
And so I was like, okay, and I was clunking it out. I mean, it was not pretty for the first 4 or 5 months. And then I started to get a little fluidity with it. And then I started to buy books and I could read a tiny bit and clunk out some more songs. And, I just loved it because it was something I was doing just for me.
Yep.
There was no judgment associated with it.
That's it.
And then, what happened?
You became like a famous.
Someone asked me to play a gig, like an actual gig.
And you got real in your head.
I got so in my head, and I was like,
that neighborhood,
no, now I'm going to be judged for this thing.
That's it.
And now I've got to sit and practice. And it really, it changed the geometry of it for me.
Were you able to get back to that? It's a bit simple, but the purity, as it were.
Yes, but it was interesting to see the transformation in terms of how I was approaching it. And I was like, no, I really don't want that. I really just want this to be something that's purely for me, that is just enjoyable and creative, and actually would lose sense of linear time and eventually find
and Gay Hendricks and Katie Hendricks, they call that your zone of genius, and I love the idea of that. And it has anything that even has a kernel of what you love to do in it. And one of the markers of it is that you lose sense of time. Yeah. And I discovered painting was one of mine. And it's nothing to do with like being better than anyone else or anything, but what you're talking about is that. And I just love that.
Yeah.
Rick Rubin, I feel like, oh my God, I want to be best friends with you, because he was talking and I so recognized myself in, so with the painting, I painted my way into this book. I mean, I couldn't stop. I'm an addict anyway. So, and now I'm grateful I stopped drinking, but now I've just replaced it with cookies and more painting. Like literally, I have like paint on my face probably, but I don't know what I'm doing. There's no attachment. And if I like quote unquote mess up, I just paint over it. And it's the coolest thing. And so I'm like, I keep trying to take that into my writing and other areas of my life. And some days it works, and it's just such a beautiful way to be. I liken it, I do this exercise that I used to do with Lydia Yuknovich, which she borrowed. It's like a hybrid of a Linda Barry exercise where I have people do a self-portrait, and Lydia did it first, but with their eyes closed with non-dominant hand.
Wow.
And, and then they open their eyes and look at it, and everyone starts laughing because it's like, usually ridiculous, and it looks like a child did it. And then Lydia gave this prompt, and I borrow it, which is, write like a sentence or a little love letter to this person. And people do it. It's so easy. And so I always ask, it's interesting, because if I had you take a selfie and do that, people would like criticize, how people get. Why is it so easy to be joyful, to laugh, to write a love letter to this? They do it in like 1 second, and they write something beautiful. And they, because it looks like a 3-year-old did it, because, but the download I got and what I realized is, you know what? You let yourself off the hook before you even began.
Right.
Because you closed your eyes and you were using your non-dominant hand. There was a message that already went off like, there's no perfect anyway, but this ain't going to be good or perfect. So there was already a letting yourself off the hook, as it were. So I think, what if we can approach everything with that, or more things with that?
That's good. That's
right?
really good.
It doesn't always work. My gosh, I'm like, why can't I listen to my own bullshit?
Yeah. That's really good. Um, yeah, for me, I'm always trying to check the ego. There's
Trying to check it.
yeah, there's so I met this guy a few weeks ago. His name is Satish Kumar.
His name is what?
Satish Kumar. He's an old Jain monk. He's 90 years.
I mean, I'm deaf. I don't know what you said, but when I see the transcript, I'll figure it out.
Okay. He's just an old Indian dude, okay? And he's a monk. And he walked for 2.5 years in a pilgrimage for peace, penniless, to every capital of a country that had nuclear arms.
Gee, wow.
Okay? Amazing guy.
Wow. I mean, that's like love embodied.
And so I was sat next to him at an event, and we started talking about Rabindranath Tagore. So wonderful poet. So Tagore wrote this short poem. Well, this is an excerpt from a poem that he wrote about the ego. And it goes like this. So I went out alone on my way to my tryst, but who is this that follows me in the silent dark? I step aside to avoid his presence, but I escape him not.
Ha ha ha.
He makes the dirt rise with his swagger. He raises his voice with every word that I utter. He's my little self, my Lord, and he knows no shame. But I am ashamed to come to come to you in his presence. And so this is this.
So like you knew that, like you had that in your back pocket. So you're sitting next to the monk, and you're like,
I did. It was actually funny because I had been just reading Tagore, and I had like that passage was
of course life
was so good, and then I got sat next to this guy, and then I could barely recite it. But I was wondering, in that spirit, if you could take us out by reading one of your poems.
Yeah.
Would you do that?
Of course. I love to I love to read my poems. I'm trying to think which one.
Yeah, I had a couple that I had written down, but
okay.
I don't know. Okay, so here it is. Do you feel comfortable doing that?
Of course.
Okay.
Changing lanes. We'll believe anything. How else could we carry on unless we believed we had no choice? How could we keep driving to a job that sucked our soul unless we believed we didn't have one, so all that sucking was in vain? How could we have accepted, at least we're not as miserable as most, as a reason to stay, unless we believed that it was our bar, and no matter how low it was set, we didn't get to raise it? We tolerate long lines at places we do not want to be with a person we no longer love by remembering it's our bar to bear and by bearing it. How could we have a third date with someone who asks no questions about us except by believing next time they'll ask what I like and what I want? When years pass with no change at all, we have to say it used to be different. We'd never forgive ourselves for what we gave up to feel less lonely. What we gave up was everything. And yet, there we were, still so lonely it hurt. We eat our own hunger, swallow any urge to swerve, all to remain in the right lane, until we notice it's no longer true that we'll believe anything. We're not in the right lane after all. All this time we thought we were, when there never were any lanes to begin with. And you know how many times I forget that? Probably daily. I need this book.
Yeah. Thank you, Jen. Appreciate you.
You're cool. Thank you. What an honor. What an honor. And you're really remarkable, the way you pay attention in the world and the way you show up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then I think you'll love this one too.